About a year ago, I began doing a comparison series between the original Silent Hill 2 and the remake. For those who actually listen to my review, instead of having a knee-jerk reaction to the title, not even finishing reading the title in most cases, you may recall that I actually really enjoyed the remake in just about every way. Afterwards, I released a video comparing the games all the way up through the Blue Creek apartments. Then I got sidetracked with East End Nordics, Metaphor Refantasio, and a series of other games, including Clear Obscure Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2, Wu Chang Fallen Feathers. I also recorded some other videos about different topics, as well as working on some IT-related internship work. Suffice it to say, my Silent Hill 2 comparison series has been on a long hiatus. Fortunately for you, or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, the physical edition of Bloober Team's recent Chronos: The New Dawn has been delayed by 2 weeks as of the writing of the script, so I am taking the time until then to get these written and recorded in advance and hopefully have them released around the time October hits in time for the 1-year anniversary. That should also give me time to work on Chronos as well as Silent Hill F and get those reviews out in time as well. These will probably be my last major game review videos for the year as far as I know, so now is the time to get this done since there's a lull in my anticipated game schedule. Anyway, getting back to the main point, if you haven't watched the first video, it should be pretty easy to find since it'll be part of a playlist on the channel, so if you haven't played it or if you just wanted a more detailed breakdown of the comparisons, you can always start there. For this video, we'll be covering the similarities and differences beginning from when the player first leaves the apartments and finds Maria through the end of Brookhaven Hospital. This is also an excuse for me to finish using all of my raw footage and then edit down to just the story to clear out space on my external hard drive. Starting out, we still have the original meeting between James and Laura, with Laura still being a jerk to James for a reason he has yet to understand. I'm not doing any major story comparisons at this point since I do still intend on doing a more in-depth comparison of how the characters are portrayed in both games, so that will be saved for then. Just know that the story beat plays out the same way here. James then continues through West Vale South, or South Vale West, depending on how you choose to say the name, making his way up towards Rosewater Park where he meets up with Maria. From there, the story progresses as it did in the original, with players guiding James and Maria through Heaven's Night and ultimately to the hospital, though there are some new things to do. Making your way down Nathan Avenue will allow you to go and visit Pete's Bolorama, however this time there is no sign of Eddie or Laura. There are, however, some nods to the scene from the original here. There's some other possible implications to James's dialogue, but I'll save that for the story videos. Suffice it to say, this gives credence to the theory that this may not be the first time James has gone through this. Heading back down Nathan Avenue, you'll stop by Octane Fuels to grab a jack handle, which you can then use at another garage to grab a collectible photo and some supplies. Ultimately, you're going to make your way over to Jack's Inn, where you'll have some more light puzzle solving and some interactions with Maria. One thing that the remake did really well here is to give the two of them some more dialogue to really flesh out their relationship and make Maria feel like more of a real person. There's also a nice little Easter egg where Maria holds up the outfit she wore in the original game and asks James if she would look good in it. The answer is obviously absolutely, but James is obviously a bit uncomfortable and gives sort of a half-hearted response. Again, I think the characterization here is really good and helps fill out James's personality a little bit more. Once you open the gate, there's another storm that comes up and you replace your wooden plank with the metal pipe, which is nice because now you don't have to carry both around in your inventory. However, before hitting that area, you can go past the Baldwin Mansion to trigger a bit of dialogue that shows Maria is a bit hesitant to go anywhere near it, which is a nice reference to the Born from a Wish add-on to the original Silent Hill 2. Moving on from here and past the storm, James and Maria make their way to Heaven's Night, where Maria does some playful flirting with James, who is still obviously very uncomfortable around Maria, and it's pretty obvious. Still, the set piece here looks great and really gives it a much stronger nightclub atmosphere. After leaving Heaven's Night, you come at last to the garden Maria mentioned back at Rosewater Park. This is an entirely new scene for Silent Hill 2, where Maria shares some local lore to James about a woman cast out of town and her lover who would do anything to see her. Of course, Mary is nowhere to be found, and James expresses his frustration. Maria comforts him, saying there are plenty of other places to look, when suddenly they hear a girl scream, and so off they go to find the source of the sound, which leads them to the movie theater. In Remake, this is where Laura and Eddie are, and the scream was from Laura at a scene in a horror movie. And from here, James sneaks in by himself and Maria stays outside, much as Maria stayed outside the bowling alley in the original when James went in and found Eddie and Laura there. So, different location, but the end result of Maria not being present remains the same. The dialogue between Eddie and Laura stays roughly the same, and when they're alerted to James's presence, Laura runs away. Eddie stays behind, scooping ice cream out of a bucket with his bare hand. Not the most sanitary way of doing things, but Eddie isn't exactly the sanitary type. James pursues Laura, and both he and Maria ultimately end up at Brookhaven Hospital. Up until now, the map of Silent Hill for this area has been very much the same as in the original, even if you do get routed slightly differently. Brookhaven, like the apartments, changes drastically. As you can see here in the original game, the hospital consisted of 3 maps, and the layout of the hospital is similar to the apartments in that it consists mostly of hallways and a lot of locked doors. It's claustrophobic, to be sure, and that makes some of the combat difficult, but the scenery isn't exactly varied. In the remake, you'll notice that each floor has its own separate map, and the areas are much bigger, and there are additional puzzles as well. Not long after entering, you'll encounter Laura again, who immediately runs away from you, and in order to make any real progress into the hospital to chase after her, you'll have to make a detour to the basement to activate the generator, which allows you to use the elevators to make your way up to the 2nd floor. Now, in the original, the hospital could be dangerous for those trying to get the Maria ending since you wanted to avoid her taking any damage and staying close to her. Here, the basement section is really the only time you have to worry about Maria getting attacked by monsters, and I feel like it was a bit easier to make sure Maria stayed safe. And once you get on the elevator to go up to the 2nd floor, it isn't long before Maria goes into one of the rooms to lie down due to a headache. This leaves James to explore the hospital on his own without having to worry about protecting Maria anymore. Again, this makes getting the Maria ending much easier, I feel. It isn't long after this that we encounter our first bubblehead nurse. There's a slight design change here. In the original, the nurses did not wear stockings. That's the only change. Now, I know, people made a huge deal claiming that the nurses' bust size had been nerfed, like these 2 morons here, but as we can clearly see from my meticulous research, this is not the case. In fact, depending on who you are, the thigh highs just make the nurses hotter. You know, if you're into that sort of thing. I mean, I'm certainly not. I'm not scaroused by any of this, nor do I think stockings that hot. Rin Tosaka? Total garbage. I mean, just look at those gams. How can anyone resist? You know what? I'm saying a lot of things. I should just get back on topic. If anyone wants to complain about the stockings, they can calm down because there are other nurses that don't have them, just like in the original. So, calm down.
Calm down, just calm down. Calm down, just calm down.
In addition to the bigger maps, there are also new puzzles in the hospital. The first requires you collecting certain medical ID bracelets from the environment and then placing them in the right order on this hand in the director's office. There's also another puzzle nearby, which will also involve different alchemical symbols, if I remember correctly. The needle puzzle is still here, so that should satisfy the purists. There's also a puzzle involving x-rays where you have to line them up together on a light board in order to reveal numbers you need for a combination lock elsewhere in the area. As for new areas, there's an outdoor pavilion you'll need to work through as well, which also takes you to the pool and shower rooms. Once you finish collecting the bracelets and solving that puzzle, you'll get a key to another room where you rearrange books on a bookshelf in order to solve another puzzle, which gives you the solution for the nearby safe with all the symbols on it. Solving this gives you the rooftop key where, just like in the original, you have a nice run-in with your good buddy Pyramid Head who throws you down a shaft through to the floor below, a previously inaccessible portion of the 3rd floor. And this is where you'll eventually run into Laura again, who, after pulling the easiest con job on James, demonstrating that James has the IQ of a wet shoelace, locks James into the room where you fight the leg monster. This time the fight is a bit more intense and involves more strategy than walk backwards and shoot. In fact, that's generally the rule for most fights in the remake. They're more engaging and more fun this time around and involve a bit more skill. Not saying they're terribly difficult, but they feel more tense. The original ones were tense too, but that was because the tank controls were what made the fight hard more than anything else. Now, you may be wondering why there's only one monster here instead of two. Well, that's because when James defeats one, the second one drags him into the ceiling, and when James wakes up, he's now in the Otherworld version of the hospital. This one changes dramatically compared to the first game. In the original, certain parts were cut off and the locked doors changed, but that was about it, if I remember correctly. This time it feels almost like a completely different building, but I think that's mostly because of how good the design of the area is and how radically different it looks. There's also a major puzzle here that you have to solve in order to move on. You'll recall the puzzle box in the original that had multiple locks? Well, this is that puzzle, but it serves the function of being what gate keeps you from leaving the hospital and moving on. Bubblehead nurses change here as well, becoming more aggressive and using knives to slash at you quickly. One of the main puzzles here involves torturing a mannequin in a wheelchair. Seems a bit brutal, but who among us hasn't wanted to do this before? You be the ones to cast the first stone, if you know what I mean. Anyway, after solving several other minor puzzles, you'll eventually be able to descend in the elevator, and we're treated to the trick-or-treat broadcast from the original. And, just like the OG, the answers will net you some good rewards, so be sure to pay attention to the options. The questions are different in this version as well. Exiting the elevator puts James back in the hospital basement, where he is eventually reunited with Maria, and, just like the original, James gives the most lackluster response to finding out someone is still alive. And, just like in the original, Maria yells at him and then guilt trips him into protecting her. After this, the two of them once more need to open the freezer in the basement, another nice carryover from the original, and Maria continues to tease James. Ultimately, the two make their way back up to the door that requires the two rings. In this version, Maria expresses some hesitation about going down. Again, this may be an indication that this isn't the first time these events have taken place. The rest of the hospital takes place just as it did in the original, except that Maria doesn't suck at running and won't die prematurely as long as James doesn't mess up. Although, my only complaint is that both times I played through the story, Maria was in front of me, and then the cutscene kicks in and James is in front. How, I don't know. But, whatever. That's quibbling over details. Regardless, Maria gets murder-stabbed and ripped out of the door by Pyramid Head, and James must then wander out of the hospital into the rainy streets of the Otherworld version of Silent Hill. As for the Easter eggs in this section, the first is out in South Vale with a staircase that is a nod to the original location of Heaven Knight's main entrance. Pete's Bolorama has a moldy pizza left behind, obviously a nod to the original, as is James's dialogue here. Picking up in the hospital, we have several nods to the original puzzles, such as the carbon paper, the chains on the bed, and the typewriter, all which involved the original box with multiple locks. On the roof, we see a gate that has been torn through like something had been thrown or kicked through it, obviously a nod to what happened to James in the OG Silent Hill 2. And lastly, as far as the Fog World Hospital goes, we have the bloody smears on the padded room, which was originally where some numbers were located for a puzzle in the original. In the Otherworld, we have a wall with some hands drawn on it, which was where we originally found the key to ultimately reunite with Maria in the original game. And that's it. Honestly, Brookhaven felt much more like a dilapidated but real hospital this time. The original does a great job of feeling trapped in those cramped hallways, but just like the apartments, this feels like somewhere you could go in real life. Like, if you could break into an abandoned hospital, it would be like this. The Otherworld is also phenomenal in this version. I don't recall if I've said this before or not, and I'm not going to go look at my previous scripts to find out, but playing this version made me feel like how I felt playing the original. It's like when you see some of these remade or AI upscaled versions of games from years ago, like Mortal Kombat, you see the high-res versions compared to the original, and sometimes you just think, you know what? For me, I felt like the original graphics looked like the upscaled version when I first played it. They obviously weren't, but it felt that way. Silent Hill 2 Remake is like that for me. It recreated that feeling of tension and trepidation that I felt the first time I played the original version, and honestly, that's all it needed to do. And I think Brookhaven is another zone that knocked it out of the park. That's going to do it for this installment. Next time, we'll cover up through the prison and possibly the labyrinth, since they are so closely connected to one another. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.